Welcome to the Analytics Heroes podcast by Modern Data 101, the one and only platform for all things data products and purpose driven analytics. My name is Abhyuday Verma, Community Manager at Modern, and I'll be your host. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Dominik Neumann, a distinguished data professional with over 5 years of experience across various data roles, now serving as the Data and AI Strategy Manager at Accenture. With a rich academic background as a research associate and hands-on industry experience in business intelligence and analytics engineering, Dominic has led teams in developing data pipelines, driving process improvements, and implementing AI-driven strategies. His blend of academic rigor and industry expertise makes him a true asset in the data world. Thank you for joining us, Dominic. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have worked across multiple industries in data engineering. So, can you walk us through some of the most impactful projects you have been involved in and how they shaped your understanding of the data infrastructure?
I think in general, one of the more impactful ones was when we went through a business transformation about a year and a half ago, where the data end user, so our business customers, didn't necessarily have the right tools to actually be able to work data driven, right? And so what we did there was to build or conceptualize and build ultimately a BI team, a decentral BI team that was specifically targeting or tailored to our operations functions and domain. So we thought, what kind of profiles do we need there? How are we embedding them within tech and the business? Because one, we didn't really have that bridge of a more technical understanding on the one side and the business needs on the other, right? And so the impactful part here, I think, was the translator function that this BI team had between getting the business logic, the business needs in general, translated into technical requirements and just facilitating that exchange between a very tech heavy delivery program and a very or a lackey tech or data literate business organization.
Legacy models do tend to be very hard to work with. So, here's another question related. What are some of the modeling techniques or best practices you advocate to decouple from that complexity?
Yeah, I think in general, what we needed to do there was to build a data stream that was coherent in general, but also not as heavy on the computational side, right? So thinking of hundreds, like thousands of orders that you would go through in a day within an online retail store, you kind of have to figure out what's the minimum need that we have in inside and what's the max that we can put as an output, right? And so the legacy program itself was a full reload every night of everything that was coming in, going back way too far. And so we started remodeling to go with incremental loads, understand where we can really use incremental loads logically. Where do we have to go back because we have errors to fix, right? So like the very I guess, introductory parts there had to be rebuilt because the entire legacy system was with the business for like 5, 6 years at that point and was built like a Jenga tower in an advanced stadium, right? So like whatever you're touching, you're kind of afraid that like the whole thing falls together. And so what we needed to do there was really to think about how do we get load off the system. And I think that manual part of this incrementalization of um, also of trying to reduce the number of models that we're running. How many models can we actually combine? What can go back into archive basically without, also do we need parallel runs because we are still working on a legacy platform, simultaneously building a new platform. So we're having back and forth shares, right? Of just keep everything informed, which basically tripled to like quadrupled the load that we're having there. So just thinking about really prioritization and trying to reduce the number of loads there, like very, very basic actually, but super important as a first step.
And have you tackled the challenges of ensuring data quality and governance, especially with these complex and large data sets?
We were actually, so yeah, yes and no. In my time there, we started a project where we specifically onboarded a data quality tool. So we were still on the brinks of of benchmarking, I guess. So we talked to multiple vendors. We talked to all the big players in the business, I guess, and tried to figure out, okay, how are we combining this? Do we need catalog and quality? Do we only work with quality at this point? Is catalog something that we're doing later on? Because like we're working with a mess, generally speaking. Can we use a semantic layer on DBT, for example, just to kind of go around the catalog part? But ultimately, we decided for a small player, but a very well fit for our tech stack, for our data tech stack, to be honest, because we had the chance to build on existing DBT structures, but simultaneously implement alerting in teams, which DBT didn't allow at that point. I'm not sure if that has changed, but that was, I think, one of the bigger steps, I guess, just to be able to visualize, also for the analytics engineering team in the end, where are the issues coming from? Because ultimately we were busy 2 hours a day just trying to figure out what went wrong, and going on an Easter egg hunt there to find the problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. And any techniques or methods you adopted to streamline ETL processes for real-time or near real-time analytics?
Too advanced, to be honest. Real time, near real time was way too far ahead for us at that point. So I'm unfortunately, I have to say no, because even though we wanted, we tried to figure out what parts we could offer near real time, and those parts were on the tech side there. So we monitored the OMS systems that we were working with Grafana, for example, just to kind of get an understanding of the raw data and the streaming data. But ultimately, for our operations domain, which we were focusing on quite a bit, we didn't necessarily prioritize getting to near real time, just because of feasibility and impact effort at that point.
Yeah, managing these is actually a little tricky, and data engineering is always evolving. So we need to answer the question: how do you balance between engineering the infrastructure and maintaining data integrity?
I think it's hard, and I think a lot of this is communication, right? I think a lot of it is just trying to figure out who needs to be in which room and how are we compromising on things, right? I can't give you like a very concrete answer here, to be honest, because I think it's very case dependent. But for me, generally, as an engineering manager, so working less with the actual data, but trying to kind of steer the team and the team priorities, it was mostly on the collaboration frameworks, on the handshakes that we had between the teams to kind of see, all right, like what the analytics engineering team that is closer to the BI teams and therefore closer to the end user, what is their requirements that they need from data engineering ultimately, where they manage where we're managing ingestions and the lake, for example, right? And so ultimately it's all going back to SLAs between the teams as well. So communication ultimately.
Yeah, lovely. And you have also worked in various capacities over the years. So, what advice would you give to engineers aiming to strengthen their skills in building scalable data solutions?
So there's, I think, two major things. One is like staying curious. There's so many things developing at all times throughout the markets, that I started at some point just subscribing to a ton of newsletters just to kind of stay updated. Like my Monday mornings were reading on news on like what's currently happening, how can I use different systems in a way, or how can we make how are we maybe able to include specific things in our daily work. So I think that is like one big part, is the staying curious part, like not trying to fall into a trot, into an everyday routine of just basically doing what's happening, right? Just be proactively curious, I guess. So like that's one of the things, especially right now when AI is a big thing, when we're moving from one way of doing things to another, literally in months, and overthrowing the entire industry, right? And then the other thing I think is to like not, I mean, there is conversations out there on how AI is impacting the life of engineering, maybe also, um, I mean, in a hard phrasing, costing jobs. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's just there to make jobs easier, right? And I think we're kind of going already a little bit in the insights on the future, right? But like what the growing as an engineer part is like not to get scared of these developments, but really lean in, right? Use the tools that are out there. Not everything that you've done 2, 3 years ago, which worked great then, is still working great.
And yeah, with the rapid advancement of these data tools, how do you prioritize new technologies while ensuring mastery of foundational skills?
I think foundational skills are there and need to be there. I mean, I never had a formal training in coding, right? Like all of my coding itself is learning by doing, and I think that's the other big part is whenever you feel unsure what you get as an output from a digital helper, just try to do it yourself and figure out where you are going wrong. I think that's where you exactly like have where you visualize for yourself the gap between what you still can do and what a machine does. If you're not understanding the output of a machine, you need to go back and try to see how you can fill your own blanks, because blindly relying on what a machine is giving you as an output, I don't think that's really helping neither yourself as an engineer nor the organization that is relying on your expertise as an engineer. As an engineer, you're usually hired as a field expert, a subject matter expert on engineering, as someone who really is able to do things and even consult on things. If you're not able anymore to answer a question from a business stakeholder in a way um, that is understandable, but you have to refer to a digital helper, I feel that's when you have to kind of step back for a second, just brush up a little bit, and then see how this digital helper is able to kind of complement your skill set without leaving you behind and understanding what you're doing.
Yeah, very true. And what strategies have worked for you when training or mentoring junior engineers to grow into senior roles in data engineering?
Listening, really listening. Generally, the a lot of people are trying to then get go with the flow, and they are really. So I had the fortune. Let's put it that way. I was fortunate enough to work with junior and mid-level engineers who were really trying to advance in their career and in their knowledge levels, specifically in their knowledge levels. Not necessarily like I want to be like the principal engineer in 2 years and like go through all of that as fast as I can. Not necessarily that, but I want to understand. I want to be part of the conversation that is helping me to kind of like go with this, right? So what can I do in order to be part of that conversation? And I personally, in general, always give the advice: if you find a classroom, a certification, if you find a thing online that allows you to showcase also outside of the organization what you can do. Try to figure out how it complements your daily work, implement it in your daily work, get the certification for it, and then you're one having the option to stay or leave whenever you want to go. Um, and you have a signaling that helps you branding yourself as someone who understands what's going on, right? And so I think the that part is the important part. Like one, listening to where they really want to go, and then second, help them to showcase that they are going there, right? A lot of people are trying to skip that step of the journey, right? But learning itself, growing itself is the journey, right? I need to understand if I'm working with someone new who went through the business for the last 2 years, I kind of want to understand what was their journey, because just because they started as a junior and then they're a senior, and me being a new touch point for them, the senior itself, the title itself, doesn't tell me anything. What I really want to know is how did they get there? Did they do the required steps in order to grow as people, right?
And also, when exploring new tools, when people come in, they tend to have this old tool into their daily data set operations or daily workflows. So, how can data engineers assess the fitness of these tools for their projects? And could you share an example of a recent tool you evaluated and your decision making process behind this, adoption or rejection?
Yeah, I think that specifically the data monitoring tool that we talked about earlier is a great example for that. As I said, we talked to all the big players, we talked to all of them, and they're having fantastic capabilities, right? They can, there's this one tool that can do all of it. And then we're trying to figure out, okay, one, how do we onboard? Second, how are we not getting lost in the capabilities, right? Not It's not always helpful to have it all if it's unfiltered. So we were really trying to figure out, okay, what's our landscape like, and how does this really fit into the landscape? Then we did user testing, obviously. So we asked a bunch of the engineers just to browse, figure out like, is it intuitive for you? Like, does it do the things that it expects you that you expect it to do? Um, and just familiarize yourself. And then let's have a conversation about that. How did you feel about it? How do you like it? Can we connect? Can we collect some voices here? And I think ultimately we went with like a player that was in a startup mode, but for us, really a great conversation. We had a great conversation with our leadership team. They were very open minded. Um, we we as a customer had a lot of accesses and had a lot of chances to go through the proof of concept together and to test the tool in our environment. One of the things that we had there, and that was a conversation that we had with a vendor that we didn't take, is well, we need this as a proof of concept within our landscape. It's not helpful for us to test this tool in your landscape. We need it connected to our landscape because I can't drive a Ferrari on a dirt road. I'm paying the Ferrari, but I could probably also go with a, I don't know, Polo, right? Because ultimately it's not fit for purpose. And so what was important for us is to test in our own environment at least parts of the functionality. And that was something we were very, very persistent on.
Yeah. And was this at your current job, this tool onboarding?
No, that wasn't my previous job. I'm
Uh,
mostly talking about my previous job, to be honest. Also because there I have the most project experience, so maybe getting to know the real Dominic is like a thing.
yeah.
Here, because I've been with my new employer for just a month now, so I'm trying to figure out how to go into my role. But I'm already getting a lot of like really fantastic insights from a great number of people.
And based on your experience thus far, what are the top three aspects you believe are lacking in the current analytics stack, which make the day-to-day of data engineering challenging?
Good question. Um, I don't know how to express this, but what made it really hard to work was finding the balance between strategic must-haves and ad hoc requesting. So what was very time consuming and what was coming in our way quite a bit in our daily work is pre-qualifying requests. And so I think having a legitimate and exhaustive data literacy program, for example, or a way of building literacy, a way of making the journey for the end user more customer friendly, helping them understand what's happening. Like the if you want to say a data marketplace, but very guided. I think this is helpful, and I'm personally making or putting a lot of trust there into AI as tools going forward because I feel like this is gonna be a game changer in a way that we will see that customers become more literate, whether they like it or not. Because they're able to ask questions within tools, within intermediary tools that may help them guide their questions that they have also better. Because I think a lot of the time that was sucked out of our day was due to basically clarification questions like what do you actually, why do you need this, and how big is the business impact that you're trying to solve here because or bring here because we were a I mean if in an international setting that's an easier example if different countries contributing differently to your end results right to your revenue composition and everyone within their country or market for sure thinks that their work is very important to the business. And that's also almost always true. But if I'm having a request from a country that brings 57% of annual revenue versus a country that brings 2% of annual revenue, then I know how to prioritize. And that's hard to deliver, right? And so I think having a tool or a way of just ad hoc visualizing business impact of a question of a request is kind of helping there making arguments and shortening conversations that shouldn't be too long.
Yeah, this was a really nice answer. Actually, this is where companies really need help because having a new customer ends up becoming a big problem when you're prioritizing one over the other. And yeah, that's totally understandable. And as the industry shifts towards automation and cloud native tools, how do you see the future of data engineering evolving in terms of skills and tools required?
I think I think what's going to happen is that we're going to see a big efficiency increase, also like a big increase in just going through your day and an increase in terms of time spent well, right? Because if we're looking into the the core of engineering tasks, right? They're usually pretty standard. Like that you're building something out of the ordinary with using language or code that is weird or fancy usually is not what you're going with, right? So what's going to happen is that I think we need or we will embrace these new tools just way more, and I think it's not gonna help in general because it's not gonna help um, with with um, setting tasks up, but rather go through the tasks, right? So I think what we're going to see is also what I just talked about, right? Is the evaluation and qualification part is still going to be very human, I guess. Maybe helped by digital helpers or machines. But I think the end product and quality assurance is still going to be a tandem going forward, right?
Yeah. And also, the community is abuzz with the semantic and logical models as the future of data modeling. So, have you implemented such a thing, and what are your thoughts on this approach?
We were thinking about semantic models before, but we haven't really gotten to it because we still had to fix foundational stuff, right? Can't say I have. I like the idea though, just because it just increases understandability. It's going to help exchange thoughts between teams. Onboarding is going to be way easier of new people joining teams. Um, I'm from a theory perspective, without having had any close touch points with the tech here, I'm cautiously excited, I'd say, to see more, more native ways of describing and putting together data models.
Lovely. And also, as the data engineering stack develops and we see these changes coming in, do you see it becoming easier to understand the impact of a data engineer or their team's function, or key business metrics like KPIs like ROI or ARR, and how?
For sure. I think the future of cost savings is going to be in spending. And with spending, I mean that data roles usually are revenue neutral, right? So we're not creating necessarily revenue, not at least not directly. But as an enabling team, what we're going to see is spending that kind of money on data roles is going to increase to scaled efficiencies going forward, right? And so by unlocking a strong workforce that understands data and that is able to build a stable platform that is usable and user friendly, that's going to unlock a whole new level of revenue to cost ratios, right? Because I think the revenues are just going to be scalable way easier while we're reducing costs and hidden costs, to be honest, because rework, manual fixes, the time spent on finding the right Excel sheet for the right purpose, those are all hidden costs that we don't see, right? And I think by focusing on data as a strategic pillar for the business, I think we're going to see way healthier companies compared to those who really I wouldn't say don't care, but who are not putting the right priorities in terms of efficient time use for everyone involved. To be honest.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And another community favorite here is catalogs. So, do you think they have made the lives of analytics engineers simpler in terms of resolving the piled up requests?
Yes and no. In my experience, the catalog was a little bit of a pain. Mostly because we were already very advanced and then retrospectively trying to add a catalog. And so what you're then doing is you're blocking 2 or 3 people for 6 months just to backfill. At least that was kind of like where we come because we had such significant lacks in in processes and documentation that you're that the backfill and that you're creating or the backlog on tasks to kind of make a catalog running were significant. On the other hand, if you're a young business starting early with a catalog and trying to figure out how to kind of keep everything organized and documented, I think that's where that's going to help. There's one more thing that I will say there, and that is um, a catalog, regardless of how it's conceptualized or implemented, I think depends heavily on literacy of the users. And so onboarding a catalog just for the catalog's sake may put you in a pickle because people think they know what they want, but they actually do not. And so the catalog itself either has to have the capabilities of answering unknown or fuzzy questions. Um, and second, the catalog itself could be misused by, oh no, I know how to do this. And now everyone is capable of, I don't know, accessing a data backend or a data platform. And then if you're not having your ducks in a row, you're running into conversations of everyone trying to understand what numbers are shown because everyone can mess with them. Your definitions go out the window.
Yeah.
So I think carefully implementing catalogs with with increasing literacy in the same vein, that is the way.
And another favorites to the community is data products. So have you heard about them and have you worked with data products yet?
I think it depends on how you're defining data products themselves. So for us, we try to define actually our operations data model as a product itself, managing and driving it as a product, right? And there is an interesting thought. I think it's an interesting thought. I think again, it needs to be handled carefully in a way that I think um, there's a lot of product development thought, especially from engineering, that comes from an agile mindset, right? Where you're saying, well, I'm incrementally building value here. Now, for data, that can be right if the only thing that you're adding as incremental is the additional functionalities, the additional pieces of information. What you shouldn't be adding incrementally is quality, right? So you can't just throw numbers out and say, well, that's our first iteration. Like this is like in the good note, like in the well-known like agile the picturing of the method. This is our skateboard. And now you have the bicycle in terms of data quality, right? Because you need to be sure that you're delivering quality products from the get-go. They just have to be very, very concise. Now, I think the selling of these concise, though high quality products to the business is hard because the business always wants more, right? And so from that perspective, um, I think it's a hard conversation, but I think it's a good way of developing, like, or continuously developing and improving on what you
And
have.
in your case, or if you view it in your perspective, how would a typical analyst understand or use a data product?
Um, Generally, again, with a lot of conversation. So I think developing data products can't happen in a silo. Developing data products is happening in very close collaboration with the business, right? So really trying to fit your market, finding product market fit, right? And so I think an analyst is using data products built by engineering teams by being in continuous conversation on what is needed, what is currently problematic, what needs to be roadmapped going on and going further, what needs to be prioritized in the next sprints and really be involved, at least as a, let's say, data shepherd at that point, to have informed people as those spokespeople for the data analysts and users in the end, being involved in the entire layout of the data product and the data product development roadmap.
Yeah. And also, what details would an analyst look for in a good data product?
Ultimately, from my experience, the one thing that everyone needs to know or wants to know is the lineage. What's it? Where is it coming from? What's really problematic if you as a data delivery team, if you're not having a really great understanding of where this is coming from and what has happened in between. And so a data product, maybe even opposed to a real physical or intangible product in another context, needs to be very transparent, because we experience a lot of issues with trust in data or mistrust for that matter, right? And so a lot of people are not, because data is such a abstract concept, and it can be so customizable. I think people, and especially analysts, need to feel to have some degree of um, control, visibility, transparency on what they're using, right? And so I think it's crucial for a data product to be as transparent as possible, because we're not trying to provide a bunch of black boxes. We're trying to provide real value, and the real value comes from everyone being to a degree able to explain where the numbers are coming from. Because in every, let's say you are an analyst asked by the C-level to prepare a numbers presentation for a kickoff event, the first thing that's going to come up is going to be, where are these numbers coming from? And everyone in that value chain needs to understand what they're presenting.
And summing up the data product thing, how do you think a business data team should ideally consume and benefit from data products?
I think it's data products, and the way of clustering your work around data products helps to just generally clean up your way of working. You can clearly denominate product owner. You can clearly denominate who is responsible for which piece of the puzzle. And historically speaking, from my experience at least, everyone does everything at all the time. And I think with a data product, you can shape and communicate responsibilities cleaner. You can roadmap easier. You can visualize better, and you can easier communicate to business stakeholders up the ladder what you're currently working on and how it's actually benefiting the business. Because I think this is very often like where the business struggles understanding the value of data, right? Is okay, so what? Sure, we can measure this, but especially it's easier to just do it manually. It's for sure easier. It's not scalable, but it's easier in that moment. And I think data products and showcasing and making the case why they are providing business value, I think that is one of the bigger benefits that we're having here.
Yeah, the visibility and the transparency that becomes so much easier to access with this construct. Lovely.
Yeah.
And what are some of your go-to resources or communities for staying updated on these latest developments in analytics tools and tech?
That's hard to say. I'm part of a couple of um, Discord communities. Don't ask me what their names are. They're like just popping up in and out, right? I got a couple of like engineering newsletters that are like a big thing for myself. I actually wanted to kind of look for a couple of more recommendations. So looking forward to like all the recommendations out there. Um, and there's a couple of podcasts, predominantly German speaking, that I enjoy, that are not so much on the engineering side, but more so on the societal trends, how to go forward.
We'd also really like to meet the real Dominik Neumann now. So we'd like to know about your transition between these industries and various roles. How do you keep yourself motivated and continuously push these boundaries in your career?
I mean, it's kind of what I said earlier on the how to grow junior, or my advice to develop as an engineer, right? I'm a naturally curious person. I hate to have questions that are going unanswered, and so I'm taking it usually on myself to answer those questions. I'm someone who needs not challenge, but like intellectually stimulating exchanges, I guess, right? So I'm usually naturally seeking out environments in which I'm surrounded by way smarter people, that I can ask a bunch of dumb questions and then get a bunch of great answers. And so for me, all my developments were also always a hard break. I went from academia to a postdoc in a different field of academia, or in a slightly different field of academia, into a startup scale up, into a now consultancy, where I'm having now way more touch points with so many industries and so many smart people. And that's kind of like me personally, I guess.
Yeah, and any hobbies that help you maintain balance in your life, and do they ever intersect with your work?
Unfortunately, yes. I'm a passionate golf player. I'm not great. I'm not good. I'm passionate. That's important. Um, which intersects with my professional life because it's a very time intensive sport. But it helps me because I think it's a sport that kind of like teaches the things that you need to have in order to survive in a business sport like that, right? Because you always play the ball from where it is. You kind of have to stay calm. It's always your own responsibility. You're always responsible by yourself. So you kind of have to figure out. You can't blame someone else. You have to figure out how to make the best out of the situation that you brought yourself into and so forth. So there's a bunch of analogies that I could list at this point.
Yeah,
But for me, it's really a calm outside sport where I just have to not be in front of a monitor. And then this year I did my first triathlon, which again is a new challenge for myself because I passionately hate running, and had to bring myself to go through that experience as well. But really liked it, and so kept an open mind, and I guess that
yeah.
helped.
This was awesome. And if you could have any superpower to help you at work or in life, what would it be and why?
Sometimes I wish I could be invisible, but I don't think that's really helping. At least not everyone around me, right? Um, but I think like a really helpful superpower, generally speaking, would be an eidetic memory, I guess, like a memory that just allows you to consume all the information on an instant, without necessarily paying attention. I think that would be the superpower that would help me specifically the most, and also in my private life, to be honest, because like with having a high intensity job in a high intensity environment, and that was scale up and consulting now, right? Um, you have a lot of things to think about, but if you're also trying to be a good partner, and if you're trying to balance your personal life with it, you need the bandwidth, right, of hosting both areas. And so I think if that's a superpower, I guess that's the one I would take. Yeah.
Yes, and this was a beautiful conversation. We have covered all these sections, and we didn't even know the time flew by. And thank you so much, Dominic, for joining us. It was lovely having you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a very pleasant conversation, and to be honest, there was a lot of reflecting for myself as well. Like I haven't really thought in detail about the questions that you asked me
Yes.
before, at least not in a dedicated environment, and so this really helped me to reflect a bit.
Thank you for joining us on season 1 of Analytics Heroes. For more information, visit moderndata101.com, or you can also find us Analytics Heroes on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. Click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Modern, thanks for listening.